of Research for Cultivation of Indian Sciences, jointly with Kavi Kulaguru Kalidas Sanskrit University, Ramtek. This special lecture session has been arranged within the ambit of the certificate course on consciousness studies and self-awareness, organized by the Academy of Research for Cultivation of Indian Sciences, jointly with Kaivalya Research Institute, Lonavala. This Academy of Research for Cultivation of Indian Sciences is dedicated to the actualization of the vision and ideals of Swami Vivekananda. In our earlier special lecture sessions, you have listened to the life and gospels of Swami Vivekananda. But before I introduce you today to the marvelous, profound teacher and speaker of today's session, I take the opportunity to say a few words about Swami Vivekananda and pay a homage to him. About Swami Vivekananda, Rabindranath Tagore, who is popularly known as Tagore, the Nobel laureate poet, writes to Roma Rolla, who is also one of the Nobel laureates, who was a dramatist, novelist, and essayist of France. He writes, "If you want to know India, read Vivekananda." And who this Vivekananda was? Vivekananda, Swami Vivekananda, was a man without frontiers. He did not belong to a single religion, a single community, a single spiritual sect, a single group. He belonged to the universal humanity. And that universal humanity may be comfortably termed as the mother of religion, the Hinduism, as per Swami Vivekananda. In the Parliament of Religions at Chicago in 1893, 11th September, he revealed himself as the representative of the most ancient order of monks in the world, as the representative of the mother of religions, as the representative of millions and millions of Hindu people of all classes and sects. About this mother of religion, he writes in his paper on Hinduism, "From the high flights of Vedanta philosophy, of which the latest discoveries of science seem like echoes, to the low ideas of idolatry, the agnosticism of the Buddhists, and the atheism of the Jains, each and all have a place in Hindus' religion." He said that I am proud to tell you that we have gathered in our bosom the remnant, purest remnant of Israelites who came to southern India and took refuge with us in the very year in which their holy temple was shattered to pieces by Roman tyranny. I am proud to belong to a religion which has taught the world both tolerance and universal acceptance. And this is the essence of the mother of religion, the essence of ancient Indian wisdom. And this ancient the message of ancient Indian wisdom is enshrined in the mysterious books of the Upanishads. The Upanishads are considered to be the heartbeat of Swami Vivekananda. Therefore, he emphasized on Upanishads and Upanishads only. Today, we have organized a session on the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad by a very, very profound scholar, a man of profound wisdom, Swami Atma Priyanandaji. I welcome you, Maharaj, to this session to deliver the message of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Let me introduce you today. Swamiji Maharaj has been the Vice Chancellor of the Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda University at Belur Math. He is at present working as the Pro-Chancellor of the same university. He has earned a PhD degree in physics from the Madras University. Being inspired by the ideals of Swami Vivekananda, he has become a monk and joined the Ramakrishna order, a man of profound erudition, an accomplished scholar, and engaging speaker is he. He is a widely traveled scholar and travels across the globe, disseminating the pearls of ancient Indian wisdom. I request Maharaj to enlighten us with his deliberations.
Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnad Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. That is full infinite, and this too is full infinite. And when that fullness is realized and extracted from this fullness, what remains is fullness. Om, peace, 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 that existence. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is one of the largest of the Upanishads. There are 10 principal Upanishads which Bhagavan Bhashyakara Shankaracharya commented upon. Of these 10, the two largest Upanishads are Brihadaranyaka Upanishad and Chandogya Upanishad. These two Upanishads are especially important because not only they are two voluminous Upanishads, but because they talk about two complementary characteristics of the supreme reality who we call Brahman. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad talks about the transcendental nature of Brahman, while the Chandogya Upanishad talks about the immanent nature of Brahman. We should realize that the supreme reality is defined as that which is beyond space, time, and causation. And that which is transcendental has to transcend all limitations. Limitations arise from spatial limitation, temporal limitation, from which flows causality. Because causality implies sequence of timing. What happened yesterday is the cause, and what happens today is the effect. What happens today is the cause, and what's going to happen tomorrow is the effect. And therefore, time, space, and causation are the three limiting factors of the infinite reality. We should understand that the Upanishads are not meant to be philosophical texts. In India, in the ancient Bharatiya Jnana Parampara, the Indian spiritual wisdom, the word for philosophy is darshana. Unlike in the Western scholastic world, philosophy is a word which is used as meaning love of knowledge. In India, it is not love of knowledge, but the ending of knowledge. J. Krishnamurti, the famous independent thinker of the modern times, was once introduced to the word Vedanta. He had not read all this, but he had a tremendous insight. He was elated. Vedanta, Veda, to know, Anta is an ending of knowledge. When knowledge ends, then only a realization comes. So this is a peculiar idea which contradistinguishes the Indian wisdom from the Western pursuit of knowledge. The West glorifies knowledge, cultivation of knowledge, and the East glorifies not the cultivation of knowledge, but the arising of the wisdom, and this wisdom is called jnana, culminating in knowledge completely vanishing into the known and the knower. The moment you want to cultivate knowledge, there should be a person who cultivates knowledge, who is called knower, and he cultivates knowledge about something which is called the known, and what is being cultivated is called knowledge. In Vedanta, this is called Triputi. Three things: knower, known, and knowledge. Jnata, Gyeya, and Jnana. The Jnata, Gyeya, and Jnana characterize what we call the triad of knowledge. In exactly the same way, we also talk about the seer, the seen, and the act of seeing. Drashta, Drishya, and Darshana. The hearer or the listener, that which is being listened to, and the act of listening. Shrota, Shruta, and Shravana, and so on. So every knowledge presupposes the existence of these three, called Triputi. Indian spiritual wisdom asserts that real knowledge arises when the Triputi ceases to exist. In the Vedanta, which was developed in India as the Advaita Vedanta, it is a cessation of the knower, known, and the knowledge, which is real knowledge. There is no word for it, Because the moment you have a word, immediately you limit it. Knowledge is a limitation. Expression is a limitation. As Saint Paul said in his famous letters, the letter killeth. The moment you express something, it is killed. Explaining the fall of Adam in the Garden of Eden, the famous story in the Old Testament book of Genesis, Adam fell when he ate the fruit of the tree of knowledge, well known. But the Christian theologians find it very difficult to explain why a person can fall, how a person can fall by partaking of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. Indian wisdom knows why, because the moment you have knowledge, you have ignorance also. Jnana presupposes ajnana. That which goes beyond jnana and ajnana is the real knowledge, for which there is no word. Swami Vivekananda, commenting on this, he says, in his talks called the Inspired Talks, given to a small group of people in the Thousand Island Park near New York in USA, he says, Adam fell when he wanted to know. Before that, he was knowledge itself, Jnana Swarupa. The moment he wanted to know, the moment he ate the fruit of the tree of knowledge, he divided himself into Jnata, the knower, Jnaya, the known, and Jnana, knowledge. And therefore he fell. That's a profound insight which we should always remember when we study the Upanishads. Upanishads are not books of philosophy as they are normally construed in the Western paradigm. They are not books of religion belonging to a particular class of followers. They are not even books which document the experiences of certain seers. They are profound insights into what we are, why we are, in answer to certain very simple, naive questions. The questions are extremely simple, but the answers are extraordinarily profound. The Upanishad Rishis did not write books, did not compose poetry, but music poured out from their hearts, flowed from their hearts, as Swami Vivekananda said. They ask very simple questions about life and existence. Where have we come from? Where do we go? What is the purpose of human existence? King karanam kutasmajata. Is Brahman the cause? King karanam brahma kutasmajata. Jivasmakena kvacha sampratishta. Where have we come from? Is Brahman the cause? Where do we ultimately go? On which do we rest? Fundamental, simple questions which you can't wish away. Some people say that these are questions which are not meaningful, relevant. The whole consciousness of humanity was shaken for 1 full year, and how long further we do not yet know, by the tiniest of the tiny objects, which is actually non-living but becomes living when it gets attached to a living organism called a virus. The coronavirus, COVID-19, has awakened the consciousness of humanity. You can't wish away fundamental questions anymore. You have to ask, What is happening? Why is it that the world is now in such a bad shape, if you call it bad at all? Nothing is bad, nothing is good. What has happened suddenly? There seems to be so much of gloom all around. As long as there are the existential questions and problems, birth, old age, disease, death, you can't wish away certain fundamental questions about life and existence. You have to ask them. Human consciousness has to become satisfied with answers to these very deep, profound questions, which are not philosophical, which are not spiritual, which are not theological, which are not religious, but which are simple, naive, direct questions which children usually ask. Upanishad Rishis ask these questions. Keneshitam patati preshitam manah, kena prana prathama praiti yuktaha, keneshitam vachamimam vadanti, chakshusrotram kavudevo yunakti. The first verse of the Kena Upanishad. Kena, by what? By whom? When the eyes are opened, how is it that I see? How is it that I hear through the ears? How is it that the tongue is able to speak? How is it the mind is able to think? Is it the eye which sees, or something behind the eye which impels the eye to see? Is it the ears that see, or is it that there is a power behind the ears which makes the ears hear? Ears hear, not because of the ear, but because of something else behind. The mind is able to think because of the impelling of a power within, which is a luminous being, Deva. Who is that being? Then the answer came from the depths of their consciousness when they deeply realized this truth. There is an eye of the eye, the ear of the ear, the mind of the mind, which is exactly what sees, hears, and sings respectively. Shrotrasya shrotram manaso mano yad vacho havacham savu pranasya pranaha chakshushas chakshurati muccha dhiraha pretyasmal lokad amrita bhavanti. Knowing that being which is behind all this, a human being becomes immortal. The fear of death, the fear of old age, the fear of change, constantly haunting man. The whole humanity is now shaken by this terrible fear of infection, fear of death, fear of old age, fear of disease. Is there a way out? It's an eternal question which has been asked from time immemorial, millennia upon millennia, by thinking people. And if you do not want to think, you will be forced to think by the calamities of nature. Nature will catch you by the collar and give tight slaps on your cheeks and force you to ask certain fundamental, deep questions about your life and existence. You can't wish it away. You can laugh it away and say, I don't care for this religion and spirituality. I'm very happy. Come on, enjoy life. Now the coronavirus comes and gives you a slap and says, come on, now enjoy, let me see. Then you wake up. Nature gives you shock treatments. And the wise man is he who wakes up before the shock treatment of nature begins. So the Upanishads are simple answers to certain very simple questions. The answers appear to be very simplistic, but they're extremely deep and profound. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishads is one such very profound, big Upanishad. Brihat means big. Aranyaka, that which is studied in the forest. This talks about the transcendence of the reality. What is life? If we just want to give a very simple answer, it's the interaction between the individual and the cosmic. The moment a child is born with a cry, it opens his eyes and sees the world around. It hears sounds, sees with the eyes. It can feel the touch, it can feel the warmth of the mother's hug. It's constantly interacting with the bigger picture of life, the world. The interaction with the individual and the cosmic, the Vyashti and the Samashti, the microcosm and the macrocosm is what we call life. This interaction is not one way. It is a reversible interaction. I interact with the cosmic and the cosmic also interacts with me. This interaction has to go on and an equilibrium has to be reached in this interaction. My impinging on this world and the world impacting on me should be put in equilibrium. If the equilibrium is disturbed, then there's a conflict. And the equilibrium is not a static equilibrium. This is a dynamic equilibrium. And in science, there's a famous concept of dynamic equilibrium. The whole of life is a dynamic equilibrium between the individual and the cosmic, microcosm and the macrocosm. The human mind asks, what is the principle behind this or beyond this? Is this all? As I said, you can't wish away this question anymore. Is this all? A very near one dies. He was hale and hearty just the other day. Suddenly he is infected. He is rushed. After a few days, you hear he is dead. You cry and cry. You blame everybody. But you can't reverse it. Then you ask, what has happened? Is this all? This life of senses, life of enjoyment, the everyday rigmarole that you pass through, getting up early in the morning, washing yourself, eating something, going to the office and coming back day after day, year after year, for years upon years, till a time comes you are asked to quit. Is this all? Is there anything behind this and beyond it? If this were all, life will be meaningless. Why is it that you need to inquire? Upanishad is inquiry. It is not a system which is given to you. It is not a philosophical system which has been handed over to you to memorize, to think, to meditate upon. No. It is an open-ended inquiry, investigation into the nature of reality and truth. It is investigative, it is open-ended, it is inquiry. Therefore, it's called in Sanskrit jigyasa. Jigyasa is the deep desire to learn, to know. Jnatum ichha, jigyasa. Athato brahma jigyasa. The first aphorism, sutra, in the famous Brahma Sutras of Veda Vyasa. Vedanta Sutras, as they are called, Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Now, therefore, the inquiry into Brahman. You can also inquire into dharma. What is the meaning of dharma? Dharma is a very difficult word to translate. It is righteousness, it is nobility, it is religion, it is noble truths, it is right living, it is noble conduct. It's all that put together. That which sustains this life is called dharma, coming from the dhr dhatu, to hold. Dharana is a dhr. Then you ask, what is dharma? Athato dharma jigyasa. Now we'll inquire into what is dharma. Upanishadic rishis were constant, relentless inquirers and investigators. They made spiritual investigations as spiritual scientists. And then came out with fantastic truths which they spontaneously wanted to share. Not that they were eager to share, but the fullness of the heart, music flowed from their hearts, as Swami Vivekananda beautifully said. So this is the inquiry into the nature of reality. If that reality were not there, this world of our existence would be meaningless. Why? This life which we live on earth, the everyday rigmarole which we pass through, the boredom and the ennui and the angst and the stress, the pain that we go through, the suffering which we have, the escape from which we do all kinds of tricks, but we come back with more suffering. If this alone is everything, life will not be worth living. There has to be something which is permanent, which is eternal, which is changeless. What is the logic? What is the rationale behind this statement? If everything is constantly changing, life will have no meaning. To find meaning to life, there has to be something which is changeless. Change implies space and time, and therefore causation. I go from this place to another place, from Calcutta to Delhi, and there's a change in my position in space. 20 years ago, I was not looking like this. After 20 years, I may look differently if I live long enough. So there's a change in time. So any change takes place in space and time. And therefore, that which is beyond change has to be beyond space and beyond time. That which is beyond space and beyond time has to be infinite. Why? Because anything is finite will be within time and space. That which is infinite has to be one. Why? Because as Swami Vivekananda beautifully explained, if there are two infinities, one will bump into the other and both of them will become finite. There can't be two infinities. Infinity has to be one. If infinity is one, that has to be me. Because if there is something apart from me, there will be two infinities, and therefore I am that infinite. Aham Brahmasmi. This is called the Mahavakya, which is the bedrock of this Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. This is from the Shukla Yajurveda. You know, there are 4 Vedas. Rig, Yajur, Sama, Atharva. And in Yajurveda, the Shukla Yajurveda and Krishna Yajurveda, Kathopanishad comes from the Krishna Yajurveda. Ishavasya Upanishad, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, they come from the Shukla Yajurveda. There are some classifications of the Upanishads and the Vedas. And the identity of the individual with the supreme reality, a realization of the individual as actually, in essence, only the supreme infinite, is called the Mahavakya. Grand, great sayings, Mahavakya. Aham Brahmasmi is the Mahavakya coming from the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, the Yajurveda. I am that infinite. So the tone is set in the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad from the Shanti mantra in the beginning. Shanti mantras are called peace chants, which prefix and suffix every Upanishad. You chant a Shanti mantra in the beginning and you end by another Shanti mantra. Usually the same mantra is repeated in the beginning and at the end. Sometimes there's slight variations, as the case of Taittiriya Upanishad, for example. Shanti mantra is so important because it talks about peace. The greatest casualty in the modern world of gadgets and artificial intelligence and machinery and explosion of science and technology and computers, technology and data science is peace. Man is crying for peace. And there can't be joy without peace. Ashantasya kutas sukham. There's a statement in the Bhagavad Gita. If you have ashanti, you have no peace, you can't have sukha or joy. Joy and peace always go together. And therefore, if you live a joyless life, you will be absolutely peaceless and vice versa. Now, our great ancient seers were extremely scientific in their thought. Not analytically scientific, but synthetically scientific. The two kinds of science, one is analysis, the other is synthesis. The genius among scientists like Einstein, Schrödinger, Heisenberg, and so on in physics, like Watson and Crick and Rosalind, etc. in bioscience, and so many others, a host of them. The greatest of the scientists are those who are synthesizers rather than analyzers. You don't chop off reality through analysis, but you synthesize the missing pieces and try to see a whole picture. A holistic, whole, total, unfragmented picture. Purna. Our great ancient seers and sages found that knowledge progresses through three great principles. And later science, Western science also progressed based on these three principles. They are: one, the classification principle; two, the generalization principle; and three, the unification principle. Classification, generalization, and unification. You classify. Innumerable objects and ideas float around. Can you classify them? Can you put them into certain classes? Just like those of you who work with the computers, you know the office documentation. You have so many files classified according to the subjects and the categories. You have folders in the documents. So they asked, can you classify? For example, Can you classify human desires, human aspirations? What is it that a human being seeks? Purushartha, it's called Purushena Arthita. That which is sought after by a human being. How many things do you need in life? You may say, oh, I need innumerable things, there's no end to them. The ancient seers will ask you, can you classify them? Put them into categories? They did by saying there are 4 classes of aspirations. One is artha, you need money, wealth, to be able to enjoy, which is kama. And artha and kama have to be regulated by dharma. Dharma is a regulatory principle. If it is not properly regulated, the enjoyment of one person will go and impinge upon the freedom of somebody else, and therefore society will go to pieces. There should be a regulatory principle. Every country has it. In sociology and politics, we call it the Constitution. The Indian Constitution, for example, is a regulatory document which tells you how you regulate yourself in society to be able to live peacefully and harmoniously with the rest of the members of the society. So these are regulatory principles, the chief most of which is sacrifice. The individual sacrifices his or her interest for the collective. The mother sacrifices for the child, the husband and wife sacrifice for each other, and the society sacrifices for the collective, the entire humanity. Dharma, artha, and kama. When you're finished with all the 3, then you ask a profound question about the hereafter, what you do, where you go, and so on. This is called moksha. So dharma, artha, kama, moksha are the 4 classes of aspirations. They also ask how many kinds of miseries or sorrows that you have. Suppose I ask you, do you have dukkha or sorrow? How many kinds of sorrow do you have? So, oh, innumerable sorrows I have. Can you classify them? The ancient seers did. They said there's one kind of sorrow which comes from your body and mind. My body is ill, mind is not very happy. There's one sorrow called adhyatmika dukkha. There's another kind of sorrow which comes from beings outside. In the jungles, it could be tigers and lions, snakes, wild animals. Or even in cities and towns, it could be the mosquitoes and ants. Or it could be the virus. It's a great example of a being which gives you tremendous sorrow. That's called adibhautika dukkha. And the 3rd class of dukkha is natural causes. Tsunami, calamity. Although environmental activists these days will tell you most of them are man-made, but there are earthquakes, tornadoes, supercyclones, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis. These are adidevika, natural calamities over which man has little control. So adhyatmika, adibhautika, and adidevika dukkha. So Shanti is repeated 3 times in each of the Shanti mantras. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Why 3 times? Bhagavan Bhashyakara Shankaracharya will tell you that this is to remove 3 kinds of sorrow Adhyatmika, Adi Daivika, Adi Bhautika, that is repeated 3 times. So the Shanti mantra which you chant in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which is common to all the Upanishads of the Shukla Yajurvediya tradition, is Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnad Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Purnam Adah, that is Purna. Purna is a very interesting word in Sanskrit. Purna is full, without any gap, overflowing. You should remember this full does not mean that you are filling something. It is not that you have a glass, you have a cup which is empty, and you are making it full with water or with something else. No. There is no container contained idea in this Purna. This has to be very carefully remembered and meditated upon. Purna means it is a homogeneous whole of consciousness. Vijnana Ghana Ekarasa. That is the phrase used by Shankaracharya. Vijnana Ghana Ekarasa. Vijnana, consciousness. Ghana, condensed. Ekarasa, homogeneous, without any gap at all. It is just like having a ball of sugar, for example, of jaggery, of some sweet. It is not that you have put sugar in a bowl and the bowl is full of sugar, but you have a ball which is sugar itself. There is nothing apart from sugar which it has. Adah, that reality or Brahman, the supreme reality, whatever name you call it, is Purna. Idam, this world of relativity which you think is limited, space-time causation constrained, that also is Purna or full. How can that be? Because this world is emanated from that supreme reality. Why? Because that is the only reality which exists. There can't be two infinities, for example. So from that infinity, this infinity apparently has emanated. Advaita Vedanta will use the word apparently because there can't be emanation. How does emanation take place? Emanation takes place when you have what are known as limiting adjuncts or upadhis. You have a name, you have a form, and you call this a particular substance. You have a huge mountain of sugar. Not that sugar is put in something, it is just pure mass of sugar. You take a small portion from the sugar and prepare a beautiful sweet. Rasagulla, Sandesh in Bengal is very common. So you give it a name. The name of the sweet meat is called Rasagulla. This is the shape. This is the form. There's a form and the name for the sweet called the Rasagulla. The moment you give it a name and form, you call this in the world of space, time, and causation. Relativity. But this is actually sugar. The Rasagulla, which has been made of the rasa and sugar, is actually rasa only, but you have given it a form and a shape and a name and isolated that as it were into an individuality. that infinite substance, which is the only reality, appears to have been individuated into the Jiva and Jagat. This is the essence of Advaita Vedanta. That supreme Brahmana reality becomes an individual as the Jiva, which is what we are, and the Jagat, which we see. Idam is this Jagat, including ourselves. This is also Purna. And when Purna is taken away from Purna, Purna alone remains. The strange logic of the infinity, the mathematics of the infinity, infinity minus infinity equals infinity. You can't take anything away from the infinity. So Adaya is interpreted by Bhagavan Shankaracharya in the Bhashya, in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Adaya, if you remove the upadhi of the name and form, which you have superimposed on the supreme reality due to ignorance or avidya, if you take away this name and form, the avidya part, the ignorance, then what remains is only Brahman. I briefly read out from the Bhashya of Shankara to give a taste of the beauty of Shankara's Bhashya on the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnad Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Purnamada Ityadi Khilakanda Marabhyate. There's a specific section called the Khilakanda. Purnamadah Purnam na kutaschit vyavrittam vyapi ityetat. Purnam, what is Purna? Filling, wholeness means na kutaschit vyavrittam. There is no place where it is not existing as an isolated entity. That means it's overwhelmingly full. Once again, I remember that I am not talking about something which is filling everything. Just like you have an empty vessel which is filled with water, it is not that this substance called Brahman is filling all this. We always have this peculiar notion of the container-contained relationship. It is not that Brahman is contained in the container called the Jagat, but Brahman alone is. Na kutaschid vyavrittam vyapi ityetat. It is vyapta. It is all-pervading, not as all-pervading in space and time. Space and time are also included in it. There is nothing which is beside it. Adayati paroksha abhidhayi sarvanama tat param brahma ityarthaha. Purnam ada. Ada means that. Paroksha, not actually seen by you. This is one peculiarity about spiritual things. Whenever we talk about spirituality, about God, about the supreme reality and truth, the so-called rationalists immediately get uneasy and jittery. They think you can't actually see or show it, just like we can show it in science. But this little COVID-19 virus, which gave such a challenge to all the Nobel laureates in the world for one full year, the pride of man has been crushed. This little virus has shown us that which cannot be seen even with the microscope, it is so tiny, actually exists and constantly mutates and multiplies. This moment it is this, next moment is something else. So that which cannot be seen, cannot be experienced, don't think it doesn't exist. It is clearly shown, I do exist. Paroksha, that which is not known, which is remote, this is Sarvanama Ada. Spiritual truths are not paroksha, but not also pratyaksha. Pratyaksha is by that which is seen by the senses, ordinarily meaning I see with the eyes, I hear with the ears, I taste with the tongue, I smell with the nose, I touch with the skin. Shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha. These are the 5 sensations which I have. So Jnanendriyas, the organs of perception, chakshu, karna, nasika, tvag, jikhva. The eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the skin. This is called pratyaksha. What kind of pratyaksha? Indriyaja pratyaksha. Indriya is the senses, sensory, sensual perceptions. But there could be certain perceptions which are beyond the senses. We perceive certain things not by the senses, but by something else. In dream, for example, Brihadaranyaka has a full section on that. You see so many objects in dreams, the senses are sleeping, the mind is sleeping. That means there is a different kind of perception which is very, very subtle perception of objects which are not gross. Sukshma vastu. Subtle perception through the mind. Samskara, as we call them. The latent impressions. So pratyaksha is that which is actually perceived by the senses. Paroksha is that which is not perceived by the senses. The supreme reality or God or the spirit are paroksha to the senses. They are not pratyaksha to the senses, but certain higher powers of yoga, certain higher powers of intuitive wisdom, which is not sensory perception, may reveal this to you as pratyaksha. Sri Ramakrishna was challenged by Narendranath, future Swami Vivekananda, have you seen God? Sri Ramakrishna smiled and said, I have seen him as I am seeing you, but much more intensely. And I can show him to you, but my child, who wants to see him? People shed jugfuls of tears for wife and children and wealth and prosperity and position. But how many want to realize and see God? So this is possible, tangibly you can see. Brihadaranyaka has a remarkable phrase, sakshad aparokshad brahma. Pratyaksha is usually sense perception, and therefore it is called paroksha, but even that can be seen by higher intuitive faculty of prajna. So it is not paroksha, it is not pratyaksha either, so it is called aparoksha. Aparoksha jnana, aparoksha anubhuti. Direct perception which is immediate, not mediated by the senses. Sakshad aparoksha. Sakshad, not mediated by the senses. What we see in the world is all mediated by the senses. I see what is shown by my eye. If I have a defect in the eye, I see differently. My eyes, my ears, my nose, my tongue, and my skin, the 5 organs of perception, Gyanendriyas, are the mediators of my knowledge. Now, is it possible to gain knowledge without the mediation of the senses? This is called Yogaja Pratyaksha, as contradistinguished from Indriyaja Pratyaksha. Indriyaja means Indriya Janita, born of perception by the senses. And Yogaja, that which is born of higher yogic perception beyond the senses. Non-sensory, super-sensory perception. That is the spiritual perception. There are blessed souls, even among scientists, mathematicians, who get such a perception through which they come upon certain profound discoveries in science. The experience of Kekulé is recorded. The French scientists were struggling with the discovery of the structure of benzene. He was conditioned by the linear chain of methane and ethane and so on in organic chemistry. He could not conceive of cyclic structure of benzene. So the story is, which he records in his diary, he was deeply thinking, contemplating, meditating upon this, and suddenly felt in a kind of a trance, a dream or a vision. And he saw a dragon of carbon atoms. And this dragon of carbon atoms opened its mouth and was biting its tail. And he got up with a start. This is benzene, the cyclic structure of benzene. And he records that this vision revealed to him the structure of benzene. It was not a product of his intellect, but it was a revelation. Srinivasa Ramanujan, the mathematical genius of India, used to write down so many theorems in his notebooks. And Hardy, his British mentor, asked him, Ramanujan, how is it that you write down? What is the proof of these theorems? Ramanujan, like a shy little boy, he said, Sir, proof, I see that they are right. When you see something, you don't have to prove it. All of you are sitting here and listening to me. What is the proof that you exist? You are listening. The proof is that you are here and I see you. Virtually, though. You don't need proof when you actually see something. Ramanujan said, I see that they are true. Hardy was surprised. In his astonishment, he asked Ramanujan, my dear young boy, where do you get these theorems from? You don't keep on writing the theorems in your notebook. Once again, like a very shy boy revealing a secret, Ramanujan said, Sir, I worship a Devi, the goddess of Namakkal in the southern part of India. The Namagiri is a place in Tanjore. That Devi, that goddess, comes to me in my dreams and dictates to me these theorems. And I get up and note down these theorems. Hardy was astonished, unpleasantly astonished, because being a mathematician and a rationalist, we call ourselves rationalists. What is the extent and the arbit of our stupid reason? How far can it go? There is a limit to it, and beyond it is a range which we do not know. There are so many things, Horatia, which are not found in your philosophy, as Shakespeare said. Hundreds of thousands of things are known which are real but can't be explained by reason. Hardy is supposed to have sarcastically commented, "This boy, Ramanujan, is undoubtedly a mathematical genius, but hopelessly religious." Out of this hopelessly religious people come outstanding discoveries. The rishis were, in a sense, hopelessly spiritual people who have given us the great treasure of their wisdom in the form of the Upanishads. So, Sakshad Aparokshad Brahma. This is Sakshad Aparokshad. Actually, it can be realized, but by supersensory perception, not by the sense perception. Purnam Adah, Purnam Idam, Sampurnam Akashavad Vyapi Nirantaram Nirupadhikam. Tad eva, that which is Adaha, Nirupadhika. Upadhi means limiting adjunct, that which limits. What is that limits? Is Nama Rupa. A simple example which is given in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is profound sleep. Sushupti, when you're deeply asleep, you have no knowledge of anything, you have no Nama, no Rupa. A sannyasi becomes a non-sannyasi, Brahmana, Brahmana, Veda, Aveda. The whole description is there in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. A human being does not remember as a human being. Nothing is seen, there is no Nama, there is no Rupa. Name and form and time and space vanish. Because there is no Upadhi. Upadhi is a limitation which is in the form of Nama and Rupa. Name and form, which is equivalent to time and space. Because space is the distance between two objects, and time is the distance between two thoughts in the mind. The body and the mind are all about form and name. If we did not have a body, I would not say, feel within and without space. If I did not have a mind, I would not have any sense of time. Very often, when the mind is deeply absorbed in something, we lose a sense of time. It is the mind which makes us have the sense of time. It's called Nirupadhika Brahman, which is Adaha. Tadeva idam sopadikam nama rupastham vyavahara apannam purnam. That very Nirupadhika Brahman is seen as a sopadhika, sa-upadhika, as endowed with name and form, space and time, vyavahara apannam, which can be used, transactionable. The supreme reality, Brahman, which is without form and without name, cannot be handled. That which appears as sopadhika, vyavaharapannam purnam, svena rupena paramatmana vyapi, eva na upadhi paricchannena visheshatmana. It has the upadhi parichinna, simita, limited, that cannot be vyapi or all-pervading. Tadidam visheshapannam karyatmakam brahma purnat karanatmana udachyate udrichyate udgacchati ityetat. This karyatmaka jagat. Once again, there is a concept of karana and karya, cause and effect. That supreme reality which is beyond name, beyond form, beyond upadhis and beyond limitations is the karanatmaka, is the cause from which this jagat, which is karyatmaka, and the jiva, which is also an effect, has sprung up, emanated. Yadyapi karyat manodrichyate, karyatmana udrichyate, tathapi yat swarupam purnatvam paramatma bhavam tanna jahati purnameva udrichyate. Now, if that so-called limited Karyatmaka Jagat and Jiva is emanated from this Karanatmaka Supreme Brahman, which is beyond name and beyond form and beyond time and beyond causation, then is the Supreme Brahman limited? No. Although this Karyatmana, this Brahman which is in the form of effect, is emanated from the Supreme Brahman which is the cause, Karana, the Purnatva and Paramatma Bhava is not lost. So this is a very, very vital point in Advaita Vedanta. Although in a very, very simple parlance, God has created this world, if you want to put it very simply, naively, in the devotee's language, God has created this world, but God is not exhausted by the world. This is the difference between Vedanta and pantheism. There is a philosophy called pantheism which says that God has become everything, all this. God has become all this. If God has become all this, then God's real nature is exhausted by becoming all this. For example, suppose you give some wood to a carpenter and ask him to make a table and a chair, and you ask him, where is the wood? He will say the wood has transformed into table and chair. The wood is exhausted. If you call a tailor, give him some cloths, ask him to stitch shirts, and you tell him, where are the cloths? He will say the cloth has got exhausted by transforming into a shirt. Has God become exhausted by becoming this world? No. Pantheism says God has been exhausted. God's godness, godhood, has been lost in his transformation into the world of relativity. Vedanta will say no. God has created all this, but still his pristine nature as immutable, unchangeable, remains intact. This is very peculiar. So, one theory is that one part of God is transformed into the other part is not seen. Padosya Vishwa Bhutani Tripadasya Amritam Divi. The Purusha Suktam says 1/4 of the Supreme Reality has become all this, and 3/4 are beyond, unseen, and unknown. So many kinds of theories are thrown. The idea being the immutability of God, the unchangeability, the inexhaustibility, the infinite nature of God or the Supreme Brahman is never compromised by the projection of the world of beings and nature, Jiva Jagat, from the Supreme. Purnam Adaha, that Nirupadika Karanatmak Brahman is Purna. Purnam Idam, this world of relativity of beings and nature, Jiva Jagat is Purna. Then he says, why is it that we do not perceive that this Jagat of relativity is the same as the immutable Brahman? For that you have to remove the ignorant notion, Ajnana, Avidya, which makes you think that the Upadhi, the limiting adjuncts, as limited and constrained the infinite. That's because of avidya. Purnasya Purnam Adaya. Adaya, taking Purna from Purna. Here Shankara gives a beautiful meaning. Purnasya Karyatmano Brahmanaha Purnam Purnatvam Adaya Grihitva Atmaswarupa Ekarasatvam Apadya Vidyaya Avidyakritam bhutamatra upadi samsargajam anyatva avabhasam tiraskritya purnameva anantaram abahyam prajnanaghana ekarasa swabhavam kevalam brahma avasishyate. A beautiful explanation given by Bhagavan Bhashyakara Shankara. Karyatmanaha brahmanaha purnasya. From that Purna Brahman, who is the Karyatma, apparently becoming this world of relativity of Jiva and Jagat, from this Brahman, Purnatvamadaya Grihitva. The same infinite Purna Brahman has become this world, projected this world. From this world of relativity, the world of name and form, you isolate, extract the Purnatva, the infinity aspect, by removing your wrong notion because of ignorance that the Purna has become limited and become small, become finite. That wrong notion through avidya, ignorance, when you remove that wrong notion, you realize the same infinite Brahman is even here. Then what happens? Tiraskritya, if that is removed, the ajnana, purnameva avasishyate. What is that? Look at the adjectives. Anantaram abahyam prajnana ghanaikarasam swabhavam kevalam brahma avasishyate. Anantaram, there is no gap. Abahyam, there is no outside of it. Prajnana ghana, a mass of condensed consciousness or prajnana. Ekarasa swabhavam, homogeneous in nature. Kevalam, without a second, only one Brahman alone remains. A simple example can be easily given, which the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad gives you. And the Chandogya Upanishad also will mention this. Vacharambhanam vikaro namadheyam mrityiketyeva satyam. Chandogya. You only use some words and names, and the changes which you talk about are actually unreal. They are namadheya, only names. Mritika, the mud alone, is real. What does it mean? In Bengal, during the Durga Puja, the Kali Puja, and so many pujas, you make images of mud. In Durga Puja, you have Durga as the main deity. On both sides, you have Lakshmi and Saraswati, respectively the god of wealth and the god of wisdom. You have Ganesha and Kartikeya, respectively the god of success, Vighneshwara, and the god of valor and power, Kartikeya. And then you have the lion, the Vahana, Simha, you have the Mahishasura, and so on. So you create these images and you give them name and form. This is Durga image, this is Lakshmi image, this is Saraswati image, this is Ganesha image, this is Kartikeya image, this is lion image, this is Mahishasura image, and so on. These are the names: Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati, Ganesha, Kartikeya, Simha. These are names and forms. And on the day of Dashami, you simply dissolve the whole thing into the waters. The whole thing gets dissolved. Then somebody tells you, oh, is the immersion in the water is over? Can you quickly go and bring some Durga mud? Ganesha mud? Kartikeya mud? No. All the names and forms have got dissolved, and you can't anymore trace the Durga mud or the Lakshmi mud or the Ganesha mud. Mud is mud. The mud became Durga and Ganesha and Kartikeya, Lakshmi and Saraswati because of Nama and Rupa. Certain forms were given and names were given. What actually is mud. There's another simple example. Gold is made into several ornaments. The ornaments are only forms and names. You use a necklace to put in the neck. You use a ring to put in your fingers. You use a different kind of golden ornament for the feet and so on. That which is used for the necklace can't be put on the feet. The ring can't be put on your head. The moment you have the name and form, Nama and Rupa of a particular golden ornament, its usage also gets restricted. Vyavahara. But you can't take the gold and make it a Vyavahara. It can't be used. You're given a gold lump. What will you do with that? You have to mold it into different ornaments having a name and a form to be able to use it. Vyavahara, transaction. But when you put the whole thing and melt, it becomes gold. There is an interesting story to illustrate this. There's a person, a goldsmith, who inherited through several generations small images of Rama, Sita, Lakshmana and Hanuman Mahavira, golden images which he was worshipping. After some time, suddenly he fell into bad days. Financially, he was broke. He could not manage. His wife told him, why do we need so many images? You take one of them and then you try to sell it away. He said, no, Hanuman, I will not give up. Rama, Sita. Then he took Lakshmana and then went to the goldsmith. Sir, I want to sell it away and then give him some money. I can't run my family anymore. So the goldsmith to whom he went, he weighed, find out the weight in gold and gave him some money. One by one, he had to sell away. And the goldsmith gave much less money for Rama than Hanuman. Then this devotee got perplexed and angry. What? Hanuman is only a dasa, is only a servant of Rama, and you are paying more for Hanuman and less for Rama. Is it true? Is it proper? Then the goldsmith smiled and said, see, I do not care for Hanuman's form or Rama's form. I only look at the amount of gold in it. This is the Vedantic perception. Vedanta says, don't look for the form and the name to be real. Somebody is a man, somebody is a woman, somebody is learned, somebody is ignorant, somebody is rich and somebody is poor. So many different names and forms and upadhis exist, innumerable millions and billions. But in and through all of them is that supreme reality Brahman. This is the purport of the Upanishads, and the Brihadaranyaka illustrates it tangibly and tellingly. Therefore, he says here, Purnasya karyatmano brahmanaha Purnam Purnatvam Adaya Grihitva Atmaswarupaika Rasatvam Apadya Vidyaya Avidyakritam Bhutamatra Upadhi Samsargajam Anyatva Avabhasam Tiraskritya Purnameva Anantaram Abhahyam Prajnana Ghanaika Rasaswabhavam Kevalam Brahma Avashishyate. So this is very important. Purnasya Purnam Adaya. Adaya means if you go back to a real original vision of non-duality, of oneness, transcending the idea of name and form, Purnasya Purnam Adaya, if you isolate, extract the substance from the various manifested names and forms in this relative world, what is the extraction? You extract the gold and not the various forms and names into which this gold has been shaped. Purnasya Purnam Adaya, having this vision, what remains? Anantaram Purnam Abhahyam Prajnana Ghana Ekarasa Swabhavam Kevalam Brahma Avasishyate. It's a beautiful statement here. Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avasishyate. So all the Upanishads, according to Shankaracharya, have this one purport. Gives so many quotes from the Upanishads. Brahma va idamagra asit tad atmanameva avet tasmat tat sarvam abhavat. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Brahma va idamagra asit. Brahman alone existed in the beginning. Tad atmanameva avet. Very powerful statement. That realized itself as the Atman. Tasmat tat sarvam abhavat. Therefore it became all. When Kevala Brahman remains in isolation as one, the manifestation is not there. When Brahman realizes itself as the Atman, then this becomes all. That means there is a mysterious principle of individuation in that cosmic infinite reality called Brahman. That individuation makes it possible for the Akhanda Satchidananda Brahman, Vijnana Ghana Ekarasa, mass of condensed consciousness, homogeneous whole, to know, realize itself as the Atman, and then Tasmat Tad Sarvam Abhavat. Tatra Brahma Brahmatya Artha Purnamada iti. Brahmatyasya Artha Purnamada. Same idea. Idam Purnamiti Brahmava Idam Agra Asit Ityasya Artha. The meaning of this, Idam Purnamiti Brahmava Idam Agra Asit. Brahmava Idam Agra Asit. That means this Brahman, the relative Brahman, the manifested Brahman, the Sopadika Brahman, alone was there in the beginning as the Nirupadik Brahman. By realizing itself as the Atman, it individuated, as it were, and became all. Brahman as the non-dual, infinite, Akhanda, Ekarasa Satchidananda Swarupa, and Brahman individuating as the Jiva and Jagat, and therefore pervading everything as all-pervasive. Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avasishyate. Idam Purnamiti Brahmava Idam Agra Asid iti asya artha. Tathaja Shuttyantaram. One more Upanishadi quotes here from the Kathopanishad. Yadeveha tadamutra yadamutra tadanviha. That which is here is also there. That which is there is also here. Purnamada Purnamidam. Purnad Purnamudachyate. Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avasishyate. Ataha Ashabdavachyam Purnam Brahma Tadeva Idam Purnam Karyastham Namarupa Upadi Sanyuktam Avidyaya Udriktam. Because of avidya, what is avidya? The ignorance that nama and rupa, form and name, are real. Tasmadeva Paramartha Swarupad Anyadiva Pratyavabhasamanam. Avabhasamana. It appears, it shows itself up as different. In reality, it is Paramartha Swarupa. tad yad atmanameva param purnam brahma viditva. This Atman, realizing itself as a Purna Brahman, Aham Adah Purnam Brahmasmi. Aham Brahmasmi, that is the purport of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, in which the Mahavakya occurs, Aham Brahmasmi. Tad Param Purnam Brahma Viditva, Aham Adah Purnam Brahmasmi Tyevam Purnam Adaya, Tiraskritya Apurna Swarupatam Avidyakritam Nama Rupa Upadhi Samparkanam Etaya Brahma Vidyaya Purnameva Kevalam Avasishyate. There's the punchline. So, Param Purnam Brahma Viditva Aham Adav Purnam Brahmasmi. I am the supreme reality. I am the Purna Brahman. Iti Purnam Adaya. By extracting the Purnatva from the Namarupatmaga Jagat, realizing the content of the Purnatva beyond piercing through the Namarupa name and form, Taraskritya, rejecting the Apurnatva Swarupa, which is caused because of Avidya, Namarupa Upadhi. Through what? Through Brahma Vidya, Purnameva Kevalam Avasishyate, Tathacha Uktam, Tasmat Sarvam Abhavat. This is the great Bhashya of Shankara on this one Shanti mantra. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
I express my deep gratitude and thankfulness to Maharaj for his illuminating lecture. We are really blessed. This lecture will be broadcast tomorrow through YouTube Premiere at 5 p.m. for those who have shown interest to listen to this profound lecture. I extend my thankfulness to the students who have participated and also to the technical support team, the Avirup and Tanishta, for their technical support. So with the permission of Maharaj, I conclude this meeting here.
Thank you.